On the docket tonight, the parents of the Michigan school shooter out of Oxford, Michigan. Today was the second half of their preliminary hearing. They've been charged with involuntary manslaughter for the deaths of the 4 people that were killed by their son. So in court today during this preliminary hearing, we learned a lot more about what was going on in that house and how the parents were dealing with their son, who was clearly troubled. Let's take a listen to some of that testimony from inside the courtroom today.
Isn't it true that Ethan Crumbley writes, "Now my mom thinks I take drugs," and right after that, like she thinks the reason why I'm so mad and sad all the time because I take drugs and she doesn't worry about my mental health? Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And then he writes, "They make me feel like I'm the problem."
Correct.
That's the same text conversation, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And he also writes, "My mom makes everyone feel like a."
Yes, sir.
And Ethan many times says that he is hallucinating. Is that right?
Correct.
And in fact, he says, "Like I hear people talking to me and see someone in the distance."
Correct.
He says, "I actually asked my dad to take to the doctor yesterday, but he just gave me some pills and told me to quote unquote suck it up."
Yes, sir.
Then he wrote, "Like it's at the point that I'm asking to go to the doctor." You remember seeing that?
Yes, sir.
And then seeing, "My mom laughed when I told her."
Yes, sir.
Did you ask them to take him home, or did you ask them to take him to get?
I asked them to take him to get therapy.
Okay. And what was the response when you said follow up? You were going to follow up and it needed to happen in 48 hours.
I would describe it as compliant of, okay. I didn't have a reason to believe it wouldn't happen. I didn't feel 100% confident that it would happen.
And what was your primary concern at that moment?
My primary concern was that Ethan would not be alone.
And why didn't you want him to be alone?
Because suicidal ideation, I don't want a student left alone.
Okay. Did the demeanor or lack of conversation or interaction with him by James and Jennifer, did it seem to have any impact on him?
Not different than I had seen previously, with a generalized sadness.
Let's bring in the think tank, because the judge bound this over for trial, found enough evidence, involuntary manslaughter, the charges against the parents of the school shooter, in really an unprecedented case. But Molly Palmer, the bottom line, when this case goes to trial, I don't think there's going to be anyone in this courtroom that is going to like these parents.
Well, I mean, the reason that this is such an extraordinary case is that who buys a firearm that seems to be being purchased for the son when the son is obviously very troubled and going through some serious psychological issues. But it's not about whether you like these parents. And yeah, they have a lot of character flaws. The issue that I think is so interesting with this involuntary manslaughter, it's basically, you can think about it under Michigan law as like criminally negligent manslaughter. So yes, I think the prosecution can prove this egregious negligence, or at least that's what kind of they're paving the way for, but they also have to prove causation. And I think that is what's going to be really nuanced and interesting in their arguments to a jury. Did these parents cause these deaths? You can be criminally negligent, but that causation, we have never seen a case where the trigger man, right, is who we think of as causing the deaths, not somebody who maybe keeps the gun unlocked or whatever else we've heard about. So a lot left to be seen with this trial.
Renee Hill, it's not an exact comparison, but the verdict we covered at the top of the show for the 3 officers who did nothing. That's kind of what we're looking at here for the parents, right? They go to the meeting with the counselors, all these troubling notes. They know that they purchased a weapon for him. They know that he was searching for bullets, but they did nothing that day. They didn't take him home. They didn't ask where the gun is. They didn't notify the school that they had purchased this gun for him. Is that going to be enough to hold these parents responsible for involuntary manslaughter?
Well, it is certainly a similar concept to what we were looking at earlier with the officers. And it is very, very new. It's the first time ever that parents of a school shooter have been held accountable at this point, so to speak, and brought in on charges. And I think that it might be, a bit of a lift for the prosecution. However, they do have a lot here. As you stated, they were fully aware of his mindset, of what he was thinking because of the things that he would say to them and how he was behaving in the house. And then they go and buy him a gun as a Christmas present. So they know that he has the ability to gain access to this weapon, and then they don't ask where it is when they're called into school because of very, very questionable behavior. So the lack of parenting in this case, absolutely, like Molly says, it's negligence, but I think it rises to an even higher level because they were completely aware of what was going on and what he could be capable of based upon what he was exhibiting.
Jennifer Brand, how would you compare the actions or inactions of the parents with the actions and inactions of the school, right? The teacher did the right thing. The teacher saw something, I'm alarmed, reports it. He's searching for bullets, sees this drawing with a bullet, blood, all of that, reports it. But then when they have the little meeting and the counselor, you saw him testifying, he was worried, nobody does anything. Nobody checks to see if he has a weapon. Nobody calls the school resource officer. No one says, all right, maybe you take the rest of the day off. No one does anything. What's the difference between the parents and the school, where you get the parents who have been indicted and there's nothing for the people at the school?
Well, I think this is all about accountability, Vinny. And I don't think you can compare, though, the parents to the school. The school did their job to a certain extent. And could they have done more? Yes. I think we all agree that they probably should have sent him home. Let the parents take him out of that school. They saw what was going on. They saw the disturbing picture. They knew that this child was very troubled. But the parents are the one living day in and day out with this child. He is their responsibility. He is still a minor. He lives under their roof. And when you hear some of this testimony about this child saying, I'm having troubles, and the father saying, suck it up. I mean, and then buying a gun for him, I just think it's astonishing that that could go on. And I do think that these parents need to be held accountable because they saw what was going on. I mean, maybe they didn't know he was actually going to shoot the other kids, but it seemed to be leading in that direction, and they didn't seem so shocked when this all happened. So, there's a lot of different parties here that can have some accountability, but I think these parents, wow, it's really,
here's the problem I have with the school.
Disturbing.
I mean, I've covered so many of these stories where you have kindergartners who go like this, right? And they get suspended.
Yeah.
And they get sent home.
Yeah.
This kid's doing his, and everything's fine. He goes back to class. That's what I don't understand.
Well,
all right.
he should have been sent home. Absolutely, Vinny. I agree with you there.
Everyone's staying with us. We'll be right back.